Do I have to hang up or no? Yes.
That's it. In which volume?
Fauci had COVID last week. He took Paxlovid for 5 days. Then he tested negative for 3 days.
Can I help you?
This is Dr. Agustin.
Called a rebound. Paxlovid
Dr.
rebounded.
Agustin, hold on.
He was worse off than before he had taken.
You should get it again after
Yeah,
this.
they told him to take it for another 5 days. There's a whole. Fauci. No, I saw it on the online Medscape. Yeah, I could send you the.
Harold, was machst du, Harold?
Hi, Jonah.
You're muted.
I don't know, who ordered the cystogram?
Yeah, just waiting to get started.
Okay.
Which
How are you doing?
volume now?
We're on
Good.
10, no?
10. We're at the back. We're on page.
Result of the cystogram.
What's the page 340 or something?
We're on page 3.
Fauci says.
Yeah, 339, 34. Yeah, we were just.
Okay,
Yeah, we were at,
339. Okay.
Got it.
I think so. 338 or 339. He stopped there. And then
And there's a whole.
I need volume 11. I don't have it. And they
I
finished.
think the problem with the time was Ernie's email, and the subject said 8:30, but in the body of the email, it said 8.
Yes.
Confusing.
Yeah, listen, you can't trust those doctors.
I think they're writing a prescription.
Can you
You
switch
can
off the
trust
recording?
my
pilot?
message. You can trust my message.
Is now they made a list, they passed a law. They made
We'll
a
know who to believe.
Mario, you switch off the recording for a second.
They call them sensitive. Places that they're trying to.
Three 39.
Yeah, I think it's 337, I think, it's 336.
I think we were on the top of 338. We were there. It's okay.
No, we didn't talk about Gartel, no. I think we're at 336, actually.
Oh.
We started the Mishnah Berurah, and we learned the Mishnah Berurah. So 336 on the top. According to the Mishnah Berurah, one was required to wear, at least in his time and locale, shoes. Actually, we did the Piskei Teshuvos, 337, 337. We also did the Pninei Halacha. We did it, but we stopped, I think, on the bottom. We did the Pninei Halacha. He talked about that in places where people don't wear sandals and socks, they can daven in there. It has to do with the local custom. That's the last halacha we learned, the Pninei Halacha. But another custom practiced by many Hasidim today is wearing a gartel. We have some people in our shul, special black belt worn around one's waist prior to tefillah. There's somebody else at the door. 1 second. Now, what is the basis of a gartel? And it is are you mechuyev to wear a gartel? So one of the original reasons for wearing a gartel stems from the Gemara in Brachas, which cites, which we learned before, whether you need to separate between one's heart and one's genital area. We learned this when we were dealing with Kriya Shema. Tana Rabbanan, Haya Yashem B'Taliso. Person was sleeping with a cloak, like a nightshirt. No underpants or undershirt, but just like a nightshirt that covered, let's say, his body and down to his knees. And he's in a nightshirt, and his head is also in the nightshirt. He's so cold. Or think about somebody who's covered by a sheet, including his head. He's naked, and he's covered by a sheet. Choitzitz betaliso at savoro. You got to sort of gather the garment a little bit at his neck. The kor kriyashma. The yeshomrim ala libo, not on his neck, but on his chest. The Tanakama re libo rosa erva. Now, the Tanakama that said it's enough for you to sort of gather a garment by your neck, but then that's a problem. Your heart and your genitals are in one domain, and that's called libo rosa erva. Ksavar libo rosa erva mutter. That you're allowed to read Kriya Shema if your heart and the genitals are in one domain. However, the Shulchan Aruch rules with the opinion that you need to separate between the heart and the erva. Tzorch le'ezor, le'ezor means like to belt. Ezor b'shas tefillah. Afilu yesh lo avnei she'en li baros ha'erva. Now, even if you're wearing a belt that separates between the heart and the erva, mishum hikon, aval shar brachos mutar levarich b'lo chagura. It's only for tefillah that you need the belt. But for other brachos, you can do it without a garter. He's wearing pants. They liborosa erva. The pants are protecting the genitals from being in the same domain as the heart. Now, the Mishnah Brura, this is a little complicated. So the Mishnah Brura explains, when it says tzarich that you need a gartel, he says b'di'evidim is pala below ezer yatsa. So it's very interesting language of the Mishnah Brura. Sounds like lechatchila, you should have a belt. Now, we might not have a black garter like the Hasidim, but if you're wearing a belt on your pants, so that's also a belt. It fulfills the same.
What about this?
That's not a belt. Jerry is asking me about suspenders.
Huh?
We're talking about a garment that's being wrapped around your waist to separate between your heart and your genitals.
So this does that?
No, that wouldn't work.
Not if you put it on that way.
That wouldn't work.
Put one of these in or go?
No, but I'm just pointing out to everybody that from the language of the Mishnah Brura, it sounds like lechatchila, you always need to have a belt of some kind. That's for somebody who normally wears a belt. So let's say you don't wear a belt all day, then technically you don't have to wear a belt, says the Mishnah Brura. Midas chasidus afichai gavna. But even in that case, even if somebody's not used to wearing a belt, you should wear a belt for davening, says the Mishnah Brura. Avneit, ratzalomer avneit shel mechnasayim. We're talking about a belt holding up your pants. Amafsik ben libo erva, which, because of its location, separates between his erva location and his heart. Shar brachos, but other brachos doesn't need it. V'hu aden kriyashma, de lo shach hikon likras elokecha kim kishoyme lifnei hamelach. So right away, the Mishnah Brura points out to you that it's a difference between kriyashma. There is no din of hikon, prepare yourself for meeting the melech. Yes, by kriyashma we're accepting ol malchus shamayim, but it's a different sort of acceptance. Presenting ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's different. We're accepting him on us, but it's not like we're presenting ourselves to him. That seems to be what this svara is. Not necessarily pants, but if you have like a t-shirt that is stuck to your chest and abdomen, that's enough, he says. You don't need, because that's already considered like a separation between the erva and the heart. That's mafsik ben libo le'erva. So based on the Shulchan Aruch Mishnah Brura, it would seem that according to the strict halacha, there's no need to wear a gartel, since the top of one's pants, which is like tight, even without a belt, or one's belt already serves the function of separation between the upper and lower body. And the Piskei Tshuva says it befeirush. You don't need to have a belt. That's some levishus b'chnasaim, the actual wearing of pants. Afilu ein behem avnei v'chagura klal. They don't even have belt loops. There's no belt, doesn't make a difference. The pants themselves, mafsik beino lebo arve. Kafi shapir shamishnah brura. V'yesar chava b'simen memvav, which we learned. Li'inyan birchas Ezer Yisrael b'gvura, alavishas hachagura avneit, means the bracha that we make in birchas hashachar that we wear a belt. Avneit tahachu michnasayim. V'chena avneit sheyizkar shulchan b'reish simen tzadik aleph, which we learned tonight, is also pants. Afakav the Beloshen Torah perish avneit uchagura. Even though in all the parshios of the Kohanim, an avneit means a belt. Kidechziv avneit bad yachkor. Sometimes in the language of Chazal, pants are considered an avneit as well. The Yalkut Yosef, the son of Rav Ovadia, says the same thing. He says it's a good thing to wear a belt. Mishum ikon lekras Elokecha Yisrael. Mikol makom. Kayom som chela michnasayim mudakos. We rely on pants that are sort of tight. Or lagumi shebetocha michnas atachton. Even your underpants have an elastic in the top of the underpants. That's already enough. What were you saying, Jerry?
The Sfardim, they wear a robe. The Moroccan shoes, let's say.
Say it again. A
They wear a
robe.
robe.
So they would need,
robe.
if they were wearing underpants, that would be okay.
Okay, the under.
Because he says the top of the underwear that has like a elastic in it is considered a belt. Well, the frachi yeshamim the mishar lechol yom b'li chagura gam b'shas tefillah in tzarich lavkor. Those people that don't wear a belt the whole day don't dafka need to wear a belt when they daven. Uven sheis chalach or gartel b'tefillah. Let's say a son becomes Hasidish and he starts wearing a gartel. V'av is baish mizeh shelo agim lo shebno nasa mishuna. And the father of this son is embarrassed because they say, oh, look at your son, he's doing something that nobody's doing. Let's say it's from the Sfardim, the Chachamim did not wear gartla. So a son should stop wearing a gartel. No, I have copies. Hi, Ari. Welcome to Rabbi Ari Rakoff, the executive director of the Mizrahi, who's joined us as well tonight. There he is, waving. We have about half by Zoom. I'm just going to get Rabbi Rakoff a safer. 1 second.
No, I'm sharing. Well, you travel a lot, don't you? Huh? Every other week or somewhere. Yeah. The country. Read your article. What's your name again? Huh? What's your name?
Bernstein, Saul. I met you here.
It was done. It's not like coming, making me see him. It's not like you had a big sale.
You know, I don't think anybody that started Zoom during the COVID is able to get away from it anymore. Because you've had so many people that live far away that join it.
Yeah.
It's a whole new crowd.
Yeah.
So they're doing both places and all, and, you know.
It's a whole new way of operating. You can dance it too simple as that.
I think we're going to finish 10. We'll start on Zoom.
Great. Glad to see it again.
Say again?
I'm glad I shook them. I'm glad I
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. What page did we live on?
39.
339. So the Yalkut Yosef also addresses a number of other scenarios regarding proper attire for tefillah. He says, Chayal shenosa imo neshek, a soldier who has weapon with him. Min haroy shekodim sheichlas beis hakneset yichases nishko tachas begadav. It's tznius covered for the shul that he hide his ammunition or weapon, so it's not visible. Shlo yir lachutz. O sheyasir saneshek v'yasgorto bezaron, or lock it up in some chest cabinet. The im efshar lo lechasoso. If he, let's say he cannot cover it, could go on ruva gadol, like let's say it's a very big rifle. V'achayal tzarich lisas nishko alav misakana bitchonim, and he's been told for security reasons that he has to keep it on his person at all times. Mutar lo lispalo kishenishko alav. He can daven with the weapon on him. Then he says, mutar lemishu chola o onus, if somebody's sick, or he's an onus, there's circumstances beyond his control. Lispalo in pijama. So if a chola is in bed, getting well, he doesn't have to get dressed. He can daven in his pajama. Levad shezrosav mechosov, his arm should be covered. Alva below ones, kiniskar ein roy lispalo in pajama. If he can, if it's not an onus, if he's not an onus, he's not sick, he should not daven in pajama. Lachen yilbash cholok al aptima. He should certainly wear like a robe over his pajamas. Mishe nechash betuv, he's not feeling well. Mutar lo l'spal nali bayis l'rag, he can wear slippers. He doesn't have to put on his shoes. In roy l'spal tefillah shmon esrei kishu yachev, he cannot daven shmon esrei barefoot. Ubefrat kishu b'li garbayim, and certainly if he's not wearing socks. Lachadchila yinalas menalav kodem atfila, he should put on his shoes before davening. Dimadavar kosher lo meza ones, he's had podiatric surgery or some he can't put on shoes. So Rishai Lispal Nale Bayis, you can put on slippers, it's not as tight. V'chein b'tisha b'av Yom Kippur mutar lispal Nale Bayis. You can wear slippers on Yom Kippur Tisha B'av that are not made of leather. It's not considered bizoyon. Maybe you need to, you think maybe you have to wear canvas sneakers. No, slippers are okay. And you need to wear socks, yes. What about levush for women? So all the halachas concerning proper attire for tefillah that apply to men should apply to women as well. They are also standing before their creator and must look dignified. Indeed, no distinction between men and women is made if you look in the classic sources. And the Halichot Bat Yisrael confirms that this is the halacha for women. Yesh la'akpid al seder v'nikoyan ha'beged shalosh b'shas tefillah. They have to make sure that their clothes are clean. They should not wear a pajama. Let's say they're wearing an apron because they're cleaning the house. You could tell that Halichos Bas Yisrael was written a long time ago.
No aprons.
But an apron would not be something coveted to wear when you daven. So Rav Menachem Nissel in Rigshay Lev says that the obligation of this clothing issue, it's not as strict for women. In practice, when a woman davens at home, she should be careful about the following. If she wears a robe, it should be sufficiently dignified that she would wear it in public, outside of her home. If she's sick, she can be more lenient. Some poskim note that although it's appropriate for women to wear dignified clothing for davening, women are not accustomed to be as strict as men in this matter. Kain Omar Liagon Rav Moshe Sternbuch Shlita, the Moadim Uzmanim, the Av Bezdin of the Eid HaCharedis today, the Zelashono, Kedai L'Noshim Lishteva Kanoshim Lolubosh Choluk Laila. Women should try not to wear pajamas, just like men. The Chadom L'Shwan Esrei. Aval Ze'ena Ma'akev, he says it's not a Ma'akev, doesn't prevent them from davening if they were wearing it. They're not machmir like men. The Kachar Meliagon Rav Moshe Halberstam, Ein Chiyuv Shel Tikun Malbusham L'Tfilah B'Isha. Rav Moshe Halberstam was a great posek. His son-in-law Rav Matisyahu Deitch is the Morda Asra in Ramat Shlomo, which is a suburb of Yerushalayim. He gave Haskama to my sefer, the Kal Hashem, and he's a noted medical posek, the son-in-law of Rav Moshe Halberstam. It's called Yad Ramah, and Ramah refers to Rav Moshe Halberstam. Ramah, Reish Mem Hey, is Rav Moshe Halberstam. You're going to see, some say the Matisyahu Deutsch is going to be the Gadol Ador. He's young. He's not that young, but he's got many years to go. But
So
some say he's in the
wearing
running.
your clothes has nothing to do that it might detract people from concentrating on the davening.
No, the clothing is
What I'm
part
saying, it
it's part of
is.
Hikonli Kras Elokacha Yisrael.
No,
It's
but
preparing
if
yourself
I come
before
into a
davening.
shul and there's a shear going on, am I coming in shorts? Apparently, yes.
Yeah, we're talking about tefillah before Hashem.
It's only on tefillah, that's the only problem.
There's gonna be etiquette and clothing issues regarding limud haTorah as well. I think we learned it when we had Hilchos Talmud Torah. There are aspects, but it's a whole different thing from the pasuk of he calmly crossed Elokacha Yisrael. Prepare yourself, and like we said, when you take the 3 steps back before Shemona Esrei, it's as if you're about to enter the Kodesh Kadoshim like the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. And therefore they want you to be dressed like you would be if you met President Biden. You have to be dressed. It's only for davening. So that's Rav Moshe Alberstam. Another issue discussed by some poskim is whether married women who usually cover their hair, that'll be discussed later on in Even HaEzer, the dinim of covering hair. But women who usually cover their hair must do so for tefillah at home as well. So, according to Rav Ovadia Yosef, a married woman is obligated to cover her hair while davening. So says the Rav Ovadia, Nishalti odot narot revakot. These are single, non-married girls. Haragilas alechas alo kisurosh. They walk around without covered hair. They mispalalos mavachos v'oim rishtar dvarim shebekdusha. They daven Shmona Esrei. They say brachos. V'lomdos b'batei sefer l'lak pat al kisur rosh. They learn Torah in Beis Yaakov. They're not covering their head. Haim ein b'zeh isur min adin b'ma shemazkir Hashem shamayim b'rosh mekubah. Is there some kind of prohibition that they're mentioning the name of Hashem with an uncovered head? Now remember, the sa'ar of a woman is considered an erva. So what's going on here? L'chein mevuar b'sefer Chesed Lalofim she'anashim ha'toivlois, women who are married and go to the mikveh, tzrichos lizar l'chasas rosh and beis brachos atfilah. So first of all, when they go to the mikveh and they say the bracha, they should cover their head. Harei shein chiluk ben ish leisha ad kan. So l'chora, there's no difference between covering the head for men and women. But the Rav Ovadia rejects that. He says, "Ein shum rayimach chesed lalafim." Shehu medaber beisha nesua, because a woman going to the mikveh, you're talking about a married woman, should tamid darka l'chasos rosha. A married woman covers her hair all the time. V'lachein chayeves l'chasos rosha kishmotzim mepias kras Hashem b'bracha u'v'talmud Torah. So a married woman who normally covers her head, that's her normal malbush. So before she davens, before she says the name of Hashem, she has to cover her head. Masha'enkin besulos pnuyos. But unmarried women who are single, sherigilos alechas begiloi roish, their normal clothing pattern is to go without covered hair. Lo shamanu shistach l'chasas rosh b'shas alim v'vatei sefer. He never heard that they have to cover their hair when they learn in school. However, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zatzal, cited by the Tefillah Kilchasa, that in his opinion, it's customary for women to cover their hair during Tefillah, but it's not obligatory. He says, Noshim Nesuos, Nohagos L'chasas Roshan, Be'esh Mispalos, O Mevorchos, Av Kishem B'chedrei Chador. Even if they're in their home, even if they're by themselves, they should cover their hair. Achein Me'ikra Din Ein Chayeves. That's sort of a minhag. But Me'ikra Din, they're not chayev to do it. But and Kach Oreni Agon Rishon Zaman Arbach, Shelo Kedas Shut Yabia Omer, Shemin Adin Asurs Levarch Lispal B'lo Kisra Afilu Bebeitan, that they should not utter a bracha or daven without covering their head, even in their home. Okay. Praying on the road, in a car, train, or airplane.
Well, that sounds like it is obligatory, as opposed to the introductory note, which is not obligatory.
Well, the Tfilas Kilchasa ended his piece by saying, Meikra Din Eina Chayavos. So that's, I think, what they quoted in the phrase. But I agree with you, Shlomo Zalman didn't say that.
Right.
He seemed to suggest that minadin, they would have to cover their hair.
Right.
And I agree with that. So what about if you're traveling and you need to prepare for tefillah? You know, what do you do? Although if one is simply planning to be in shul for a regular minyan, this question is not so relevant because you're going to go to minyan. But one who plans to be traveling on a plane, on a train, in a car, may need to consider how and where he will pray. In order to offer some practical guidelines, let's first study a few of the Makorot in the Gemara and Rishonim about davening while in transit. The Gemara in Brachos records the machlokas between Tanoim and Amorim about how a traveler should pray. This is in Brachos Lamed Amud Aleph. Ton Rabbanan. Hayerochev ala chamor. Person was riding a donkey. V'giaz man tefillah, and the zman of davening has arrived. Im yesh lo mi sheyochaz es chamoro. If he has a handler who can take the reins of his donkey, and he can get off of it. So yered lamata v'yispalo. That's preferable. That he not daven in the saddle. He should go off the animal and daven on the ground. But let's say he doesn't have that. Im lav yeshe b'mkom v'yispalo. He can sit on the donkey and daven. Rabbi Yomer ben kach u'ben kach. He says whether you have a handler or not, yeshe b'mkom v'yispalo. If he has to get off, he's worried the horse is going to run away, whatever. He's more comfortable. He has more yishuv adas. His mind is more calm, and therefore in a better frame of mind to daven in every case, sitting on the horse. According to the first opinion, quoted in the Tosefta, one who is traveling when Zman Tefillah arrives should dismount his donkey and pray if someone is available to guard the donkey and doesn't run away. If no one is available, then he should pray while riding. On the other hand, Rebbe was of the opinion that he should pray while traveling no matter what. Since if he required to stop, he's going to be bothered by the delay and it's going to affect his concentration. How does the Shulchan Aruch paskin? He rules in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, though he adds that ideally one should stand when reciting Shemona Esrei if at all possible. It's going to be pretty hard to do if you're sitting in a saddle on a horse or a donkey. Shulchan Aruch also writes that this ruling applies not only to riding on a donkey, but to traveling on a ship or a wagon. Even if there's somebody to hold on to the donkey. He davens while the donkey is walking. If he's on a boat, or gabi kron, or on a wagon, so on a boat, in a wagon, it might be hard to stand. But on a boat, it's a big boat, like what we know, you could stand. And if you can't stand, you sit in your place and daven. If he was walking, says the Shulchan Aruch, so he can daven while he walks, even though he's not facing Yerushalayim. And this heter isn't told to us by the Shulchan Aruch only in a place of danger, where a person would, he's trying to rush to walk out of that area, it's a bad neighborhood or whatever. So, no, says the Shulchan Aruch, even if it's not a Mokum Sakana, you can daven while you walk. Listen to the story he has. Kim Yamad V'Yispalel, Yikshe Be'enav Ichur Darko. He knows he's going to get to wherever he's going late. He wants to keep on walking to make his appointment on time. That's enough to give him the heter to daven. Otherwise, Yitrad Libov Lo Yichal Chavim. It's going to be easy for the person to have concentration on what he's davening if he's given permission to walk and not have to stand. Everything is based on the specific road and the specific circumstance and what kind of person he is, the level of fear and his peace of mind.
Can I ask you a what if?
I mean, for example, you're walking in a park, beautiful park, it's a very safe place. So I think basically what by him saying, Lefi Amakom, Lefi Yerosov, he's not afraid, it's a beautiful place. There's nothing wrong with stopping and saying Shemona Esrei. What were you going to ask?
Just a what if, you're walking to shul, you happen to be late on the Shabbos morning. Can you daven Psukei Zimra to yourself while you're walking?
Well, this is, well, here we're talking about,
No, I know.
here we're talking about Tefillah, Shemona Esrei. He's talking about Shemona Esrei. So certainly, certainly.
You said you can have kavanah.
Yeah, I think you'd have the same issue of Tirda,
Coming late.
Tirda Sadera, coming late. You're not gonna, Bernie asked, if you're late to shul, you want to say Psukei Zimra, or maybe even Kriyat Shema, you can do it, if you, here, we're Tefillah, we're talking about Shemona Esrei. These things don't require putting your feet together and having hikon, because of Yisrael, so I would say certainly you'd be able to do it. V'yesh machmirim lamod ba'avos. Some say at least until the first brach of Magen Avram, that's called avos, the first paragraph, you should stand, and then you can continue going. So he says, if you're not in a dangerous place, at least avos you should stand, and then you can continue walking. So, based on the Shulchan Aruch, would it be permitted for one to daven while driving in a car? The Piskei Teshuvos writes that driving a car differs significantly from the cases of the Shulchan Aruch, as one is passive in those cases, while one is active while driving and must focus on the road. Now, I might argue with the Piskei Teshuvos if you're riding a horse or a donkey. There you're not passive. You have to be active. No, if you're in a wagon, right, that's being read, so in a chanami, I agree with him, or a sfina. But I'm talking about if you're riding the horse, that seems to be more akin to driving. Let's see what the Piskei Teshuvos says. Ulein noeg berechav bizmanenu. So he tries to bring it to our times by cars. Kasvu poskei zmanenu, the poskim of our time, says, She'ein shum heter lispal toch kedei nehika. You may not daven while you're driving. Afilu nimtza b'matzah, she'ein lo efsharut lachanot rachvo. You can't park. Afilu yamtin ad she'ei efsharut kazod yavor zman tefillah. Now you've calculated, well, until I get to that area where I can park safely on mizman tefillah, you got to do that. You cannot daven in the car. You have to use all your senses and your thoughts in order to drive the car safely. You've got to concentrate on what's going on in the road. Without proper concentration, it could lead to an accident for sakana nefashos. Lanagat agalot bizmanehem, sitting in a wagon. You didn't have to concentrate that much for the rider to avoid kadesh lo yiligal shibush for sakonas hadrachim. So, according to this logic, a driver may not daven while in the midst of driving. Rather, he should first park or pull over in a safe place. Bernie here mentioned that the electric cars that drive themselves could be a different shaila, because perhaps it doesn't require the activity of the driver.
Even if you have an electric car, you're supposed to be watchful. You're still supposed to have your hands on the wheel no matter what.
Okay, maybe it's not. Maybe we're not there yet. Is the sentiment in the room here? By contrast, a car passenger would be permitted to engage in tefillah during the trip, since he need not focus on the road in the same as the driver. It means if somebody, a passenger could daven. The Isha Yisrael, we know that's a very good sefer, a contemporary sefer of all the Hilchos Tefillah. Summarizes the halacha concerning tefillah in many situations of modern travel. The author writes that ideally one should stop traveling in order to pray, if at all possible, without causing him to be distracted. But otherwise, one may pray while traveling, ideally while standing, but otherwise while sitting. He also writes that it's preferable to plan one trip so that one can pray after arriving at his destination or before he departs, especially if he knows that he will otherwise need to recite Shemona Esrei while sitting down. So part of the planning of your trip should be, well, I'm going to arrive at my destination at a time where I know there's a minyan, I can have with a minyan, I don't have to worry about all of this. Im noseh b'mechonit, if he's driving in a car, autobus, a bus, rakevet, a train, or shar klei tachbura, or other transportation instruments. Im yesh be'efsharuto la'atzor ha'rechev, if he has the ability to stop the vehicle, will ispalel Shemona Esrei b'amida yasakein. So that's priority number one. You can stop the car, get out of the car, daven Shemona Esrei standing up. That's the best. V'ima'atzira or yaridu marechav tigrom lo hafra'a b'chavanat tefillah. If stopping or leaving the car is going to cause his concentration, now he's going to be late to wherever he's going. We already saw that was enough to ruin your concentration. And I think that's what he's referring to. O shebamakom is a sakana latzor. You're in a bad neighborhood, and stopping there, getting out of the car would be taking your life in your hands. O shenimtza ba'autobus sibori. You're in a public bus. She'ein be'efsharuto la'redet be'emtza nes. You can't get off the bus in the middle of the trip. So rishai litpalel af b'rechev. So there you could daven, in the bus, or we said in your vehicle if it's a dangerous place to stop and get out. V'im yachol yamod b'rechev. If he's talking about a bus, or if he can stand, even if it's safe to stand while the vehicle's moving. At least try to stand during, as we said, the first paragraph of Shemona Esrei. Where you have to bow down, or we have to take the 3 steps back. But you were in a matzah that you couldn't stand. Let's say the bus is traveling and you're standing, but you're holding on and you can't bow, you can't take the steps back, then Rishai Lispal Af Yeshiva. You can daven while sitting. I definitely heard from when my Moradasa was Rabbi Krauss, when we davened at Young Israel of Hancock Park. I'm sure Harold remembers, Walter and Bernie may remember. He clearly said when you were in a plane, you should daven sitting down.
Right.
He thought there was also an issue of being mafriya to the neighbors.
Absolutely. He said that many times.
Correct? He did say that I'm sure he based it on Rav Yaakov. That wasn't just his psak. That was a psak he had received.
I think actually the Halacha Shlomo says it at the end of the bottom of the page, says the same thing.
Good. Oh, we're going to get there. Right. Okay. So let's continue the Yishay Yisrael. If he's calculated and he knows there's a place where he could park, get out of the car and everything, lo yavor zman tefillah, then yamtin, lo yispal b'shas hanasiyah. If he knows he can get there and still make zman tefillah, he should do that. Go to the place, park, get out of the car, daven, rather than daven while he's driving. Now, obviously, if he can't, if the destination where it's going to be safe for him to park the car and get out, it's going to be beyond zman tefillah, then he's giving you the heter to do it driving, sitting. You shouldn't set off on the road. If you know you're going to be on a 3-hour road and there's no place to stop, you shouldn't go. First daven and then go on your trip. If you daven sitting, or while you were traveling, now let's say you daven but then you got to that place where you could park, and there was still time left in Zman Tefillah, you're not required to daven again. You davened already. He was thinking, well, you might have a havamina that maybe that tefillah isn't a good tefillah. Maybe you should daven again if you have time within the Zman Tefillah. No, you don't have to. The tefillah that you did was sufficient. Now, may one pray while traveling on an airplane? It would seem that there's no problem with this since it's comparable to a car passenger or one traveling on a wagon or ship who are permitted to sit for Shmona Esrei if needed. However, the question that frequently arises is whether one should or may organize a minyan on the plane. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach in Halichos Shlomo is cited as saying that it's preferable to daven in one seat for two reasons. So that one is not distracted by those walking up and down the aisle. As well, the minyan itself may disturb other people. One who's davening in a plane. He says very clearly you should daven in your seat. And not in the aisle. You're going to, disturb the people trying to pass in the aisle. He was not happy with the arrangement of minyanim on planes. It's clearly a bother and a disturbance to other people there. Rav Yitzchak Yosef writes, who the son of Rav Ovadia, he writes very similarly in the Yalkut Yosef, reporting that his father did not participate in minyanim on the plane. Hamispalim brachevet of matos. Somebody who's davening on a train or on a plane. Af shasafsalim gvohim umafridim. Let's say there are benches or chairs that are high, separating between people. Hanosim etztarfin liminyan asara. You can combine, technically, meaning there are dinim in minyan where if you can't see the other person, you might not be able to mitzvah the minyan. But he says on a plane or a train, even though there seems to be objects that are separating between people, it's not a minua from the minyan. The minyan should sort of gather in one place. He says if this minyan in the train or plane is gonna disturb the other passengers, the passengers are trying to sleep and you are disturbing that. People walking up and down the aisle are going to disrupt people's kavanah during davening. Better to be silent, quiet, relaxed, and daven b'yichidus without a minyan. Mitoch kavanah. Rather than to organize a minyan and to disturb all these other people. Certainly, if it's mafriya, his own kavanah. If the minyan is going to disturb the passengers, some are sleeping, and the davening is waking them up. Even though they're not religious Jews, you should not underestimate the impact that you're doing on other people. You should not daven in a minyan. If you're going to disturb other people. People are always complaining. The sitters who are not participating, they're complaining. It prevents people from going to the bathroom. It says the Yitzchak Yosef, Zichroni Eitzel Maran Admor, he's referring to his father, Avi, Rav Ovadia, Rav Ovadia Yosef did not participate in the minyan that was organized on the plane he was on. So we saw the two major sources who've written about this. The Shevet HaLevi, Rav Vosner, was asked by LL Airlines to provide guidelines for those who wish to pray in a minyan on a plane. Unlike Rosh Shlomo Zalman Rav Yosef, he does not recommend always refraining from organizing minyanim, but stresses that it must be done in the proper manner that does not disturb others, and in which participants heed the rules for fastening seatbelts if the need arises. So this was actually a tshuva to a shaila sent to him by Elal. Nishalti basher l'sidrei tefillah b'malach tisot, yesh li manami letpalel b'it kalot. He was asked, should we stay away from organizing minyan? Is it, or odif lispal b'kvutzas ktanot b'mkomot yeshiva? Better to daven in small groups where people are sitting. B'tnai sheb'makom lo yeh gilui erva. As long as it was tznius there. V'chen hadavar l'gabi tefillah shmona esrei. Im kayemet efsharut lamod samud l'mushav. Could you stand next to your seat to daven shmona esrei? V'lo b'ma'barim, not in the aisle. Ulispal mutiv. Then you could do it. But v'lo kayemet efsharut l'kach. If you cannot stand in your seat because it's too narrow, or the people sitting next to you is going to disturb them. Here he's talking about a minyan, that you should gather the minyan with 10 people, but everyone should sit where they are. V'lo kalut, not gathering obamav or in the aisles. If the seatbelt sign light goes on, you have to sit immediately. Even in the middle of Shmona Esrei. If you are in a group, and a sign goes on that you have to go back to your seat, without delay, even if you're davening Shmona Esrei.
It's amazing how things have changed. In the 70s, no poskim said that you shouldn't stand up and say the Shemona Esrei. And not until recently, in the last 20, 30 years, have they decided that, it's okay. Don't stand up, don't form a minyan. But before, when someone would have come up to you, you'd have to go. You know what I mean? There was no matter how
I believe what
comfortable it was.
happened, there was a lot of chilul Hashem, and it got back to the Rabbonim. Both, and therefore that's why these psakim came out. Many American poskim have taken a similar position. Rav Herschel Sechter has also written that one should not participate in such minyanim for similar reasons. See his piece titled "Davening on Airplanes," where he mentions these issues. Now, Rav Shlomo Warman discusses his misgivings about the practice in his Sefer Sherit Yosef, and notes that it is often difficult to hear the chazan, plus it's difficult to concentrate properly. Due to the difficulties and fear of disturbing others, he writes that many poskim do not advise participating in such minyan. He says every year he would travel to Israel for a few weeks. Every time I flew, they would organize minyanim in the aisles. They want to be Makayim Tefillah B'Tzibur. V'zeh kama shanim she'itchalti lefakpek ba'osar minyanim. There's already years have gone by where I wonder whether this is the right thing to do. They're gathered very tight, in a very narrow place. People coming up and down the aisle, up and down, are disturbing the tefillah. It's very hard to concentrate. And I and Bigras Moshe, the Bigras Moshe, da mispal tefillas yochid be'es hatisa. Afim yuchal lamod mikol makom im yesh chashash hadavar yigrom lafrat tov lechatchila shevet. Rav Moshe said that better to daven b'yechidus. Even if you could stand, it's still better because you're going to disturb your neighbor. I think when Rav Ovadia, when Rav Kraus told us his din, he quoted Rav Moshe. There's a biography of Rav Warman. He was a rabbi in Hank. You know him? You knew of him.
Many of his students, yeah.
Okay. Many people still participate in minyanim organized on flights, specifically those from North America to Israel, which is long and usually require 1 or 2 daily tefillot. However, it has been accepted in many cases, such as on El Al or United Airlines, to obtain the permission of the flight crew to organize a meeting in the galley area of the plane where the food is prepared when it's not being used, as there's a bit more space there, and it does not disturb other passengers in most cases. In such cases, the concerns mentioned by the poskim above are reduced, provided the participants follow the crew's instructions. Others still prefer to remain in their seats while praying, which we have seen has significant support from distinguished poskim. Now, what direction should you face when you're davening while you're traveling? According to the Gemara in Brachos, one who is traveling should try to face towards Yerushalayim and the temple. By the way, in the footnote 18, Rav Warman discusses whether people can count for the minyan if they cannot all hear the chazan due to the noise of the plane. With regard to this point, he argues that perhaps their presence alone is sufficient for them to count for the minyan, but he cites from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Rav Vos, and Rav Ovadia, who recommend not joining a minyan if it may lead to disturbing others. Okay. So brachas lamed omerab. If somebody is outside of Eretz Yisrael, he should face Eretz Yisrael. So, for example, if you're in the north of Eretz Yisrael, you should face south. If you're in the south of Eretz Yisrael, you should face north. Vice versa, west and east. Shenemar Vispalu elecha derech artzam. It's a pasuk in Malachim that you should daven sort of along the road to your nation. Hayom Eretz Yisrael. If you're in Eretz Yisrael, you have sleep connect Yerushalayim. So if you're in Tel Aviv, you should face Yerushalayim. Shenemar Vispalu Hashem derech ha'ir asher bocharta. Daven towards the city that Hashem chose. Hayom Yerushalayim you have sleep connect Beis Hamikdash. Then if you're in Shalayim, should daven towards the Beis Hamikdash. Remember, Vispalo labayis hazeh. Hayom Beis Hamikdash. Yichav neslibo keneged Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. You should face towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Remember, Vispalo lamakom hazeh. Now, if one does not know which direction he is facing, he should just focus his prayers towards Hashem in heaven. Ton Rabbanan, Suma, someone who's blind, doesn't know which direction he's facing. Doesn't have a compass. He's traveling. He doesn't know which direction is which. You should sort of point heavenwards. Now, regarding modern travel, Rav Ben Zion Abba Shol writes in Shas and Shuvas Orlet Zion that one should try to face the general direction of Eretz Yisrael Yerushalayim. Hanoseh b'matos o ba'oniyah, someone's traveling on a jet or a boat. Aval b'sheinam matos nosea kol meshach hanesiyah b'kav yashar mamash. Listen, the plane is, they're not traveling exactly in a straight way. Kasha l'dai kivin Yerushalayim, you don't know for sure. On the other hand, in most of the flights I go, they show you,
You
they show you
can follow the route.
yeah, they show you where you're going.
Yeah, where the plane
So they usually know.
It's a new feature I know of.
Yikavin l'tzad Yerushalayim b'yachas l'chavin nesiyasu haklali. You should try to face Jerusalem. Aval pi shepamim matos noteh ma'at mekivun zeh, even though it changes direction. V'lachen hanoseh l'Eretz Yisrael yichanev panav keneged pnei matos. You should face the front of the airplane. When you're leaving Eretz Yisrael, you have to face backwards. Same thing with a boat. Whatever, if you have no other choice, you should focus your thoughts on heaven. Says the Yakut Yosef, and with this we conclude volume 10. We spent good 6 months, I think, on volume 10. Amispal matos. Im matos noseh lechivun Eretz Yisrael. Yispal keneged pnei matos. If you're traveling to Israel, you should face front. V'matos tas mea aretz. If the plane is leaving Eretz Yisrael, yichavin ponav keneged zeva matos. You should face backwards, which is towards Israel. Okay, yasher koach, everybody. So we will definitely start volume 11 next Tuesday. Again, it'll be 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. The first are things that what you have to do, what's forbidden before tefillah. Like, can you start a meal, things like that.
Are we
Any
going,
other comments, questions?
are we officially going back to 8 p.m., Ernie?
Well, yeah, because I didn't get that there was an issue regarding the minion by anybody anymore. So I would go back to 8 o'clock at this point.
Okay.
I think it works out better for most people's schedule. That's what I heard from the Chevra.
We'll just note, Ernie, that I think the reason for the confusion today is while in your email you said 8, that the subject line says 8:30. So you might want to look at that.
Sorry, you know what? I changed the July, I changed June 28th to July 5th, but I didn't change the light, the time. Okay, but everybody may, we had a big crowd today.